Welcome to another episode of What is a Conscious Brand? Today I have Yarrow Willard, Master Herbalist and Director of Wild Rose College of Natural Healing, and also the founder of Harmonic Arts. Yarrow, thanks so much for being with us. What is Harmonic Arts?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Harmonic Arts is, we're a herb dispensary, botanical dispensary for superfoods, medicinal mushrooms, herbs, and all kinds of ways in which you can upgrade your health.
Okay, right. And how long has Harmonic Arts been helping individuals upgrade their health for?
Well, basically, we've been around for around 9-10 years. Really 9 years, but 10 years if you include our thought bubble process.
The thought bubble. So the thought bubble, that's a great segue into, what do you think a conscious brand is?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's going to be a lot of different ways you could define a conscious brand, but I really believe that it's looking at all stakeholders involved, from the ground up, from the vendors to the end users, and making sure that there's a seamless connection and somewhat harmony, aka harmonic arts, between each one of these people involved and these stakeholders. Right.
So, I love how you said that, because our conscious brand's core purpose is harmony. And I didn't put those two things together. But, so what are some of the roadblocks that you've seen in kind of mapping out the stakeholder group and making sure that there is that harmonious art to it all?
Well, I mean, I'll say the first problem starts with the owner, someone like me. I have this great idea of what a conscious brand could be and should be. And my coulds and shoulds sometimes get in the way of what it is and will be in that way. So a big lesson for me in developing and trying to create a conscious brand was to step away from my ideation and really just hold space for other people's inspiration to come forward, and then be a bit more of a barometer. Does this fit into the line of the kind of medicine bridge that our company's trying to be?
Right.
So that's the biggest issue.
So stepping out of your own way and allowing others to kind of emerge, which is an interesting type of leadership. Go on. Yeah.
Yeah. It's hard. I mean, once we had evolved to that place, right? At first, we needed to really steer the direction, but it was a couple of years there where it took us just actually stepping out of our own way, as well as creating a space for the right type of employee to come in and the right type of systems to grow within that. So there's like a natural evolution to that brand.
So actually, it's really curious. So what sort of secret sauce would you say is required for hiring those employees? Like what was that point that you knew?
Well, first off, I had to step out of hiring. That was a big one. People identify me as the brand and therefore are trying to be and win my favor, versus actually have someone who's a little more or less attached to the identity of that, who is a little more methodical around, okay, let's make sure. So we're slow to hire, quick to fire is the kind of model, but at the same time, making sure that the team all is in alignment with the new hire and that person is able to kind of grow into the job properly. Like, we've had a few new hires in the last year, and it's amazing how much that shifted when we actually took a lot more time and kind of just tested the waters with people and allowed them to grow into their role before fully committing to that role being theirs.
Mm-hmm. Right on. And then, from a leadership perspective, what would you say is the leadership that's required to hold that space?
Well, you need the higher purpose leadership, but you need the ground floor leadership. You kind of need every stage down the elevator. So at Current, we have myself and my partner who hold a bit of the 3,000-foot vision, but then we also allow our general manager to come up and hold that vision as well as be ground floor. And she's got two other managers underneath her that she can really rely on. So the idea that people can't really have 6, 7, 8 people who they work directly with. So kind of building a system out that allows each person to have a real close connection to the people that they work directly with, and that then has respect from the rest of the group.
Yeah, and I like that idea because, different levels of the organization need to see different things. So as an owner founder, you probably see things from the 1 to 3 year range. Maybe your general manager sees things in that quarterly range. And then the next level down is more month to month. And then there's the day-to-day employees. So just seeing how I love that, the concentric circles of how it all fits together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and then also, like, I found myself, I hold vision, but then vision needs a realist, and realist needs a critic. So like, kind of like, it's got to go through the layers of the onion before it becomes a real idea, right? So that's another piece of the conscious brand is to actually not hit critic too early, but also make sure that there's a realist in between those two that allows, like, can we actually action this? Can we actually make this a real reality? And then let's disprove it. And then what I thought was really brilliant for our organization is, how can we do this with half the energy? So our consciousness comes into not wasting energy on things that may or may not be useful to people.
I love that. I was talking to someone earlier about a model that we've started to use at Conscious Brands, which is called the chaotic stepping stones. And it's allowed us to become a lot more clear on direction. So we have to have a clear need and purpose. And then we start looking at the principles and the people involved in helping to execute that. And then, kind of a little further out are, what are those intangible and tangible outputs of what we're producing? And imagine for someone like you that's so connected in with the plant medicine, you start to see that interconnectedness as just a way of who you are and your thinking of plant medicine.
Yeah, I mean, like, even our company core values fit very concentrically into a wheel, which would also represent similar to a medicine wheel, that could be the Chinese medicine theory, and interdirected each thing. And what I've learned is that it's not necessarily the ideas, it's what connects the two, right? That becomes more of the reality we need to look at. Like, we can all have these great ideas, but how are they interconnected and how do they relate to each other? And that actually builds upon the consciousness that is something that's digestible for everyone, because not everyone in our company can understand a medicine wheel. So we don't want to put that parameter on them, but how do these two things relate to each other? So that's something that, and I don't want to go into our core values necessarily, but the concept of your interrelatedness between whatever value systems you put in place is something that I think builds upon the consciousness of a business.
Right on. So I love that, that metaphor, as well as the structure of actually having those core values, because it's so important in looking at that higher purpose of why you exist. What advice would you give a new or emerging conscious brand?
Well, I would suggest that one of the things that happens problematically for many, like, new and emerging, especially the millennial generation, is there's a bit of the pie in the sky idea in our world right now of, like, people love the underdog story of, like, oh, they were, like, in the back of a garage building these computers and all of a sudden they became Apple, like this kind of concept. That's not really how it works. The best way for you to be starting a conscious business is this, what I call the lean startup model, which is to actually do it and test it out on the smallest group. Does the smallest group accept and work with your idea? And if this small, tiny group works, how much data can you pull out of that group before you even go to that next level? And to really try to do things as lean as you can. And from there, your own barometer of value systems, which many of our young entrepreneurs have already in place. Do I want compostable packaging? Do I want a supply chain that is well suited to environmental impacts? Am I suiting the kind of customer? Like, all that stuff comes based on your values. But the most important thing that most people don't do in the beginning of a business is they try to figure the product out perfectly before they launch. And I just think, start lean, start small and full of screw ups, and just see how people accept it. And then
Absolutely. And I've had my share of failures on a mass scale, and then also on, just kind of a small scale, as well as successes, right? And I think, as a society, just shifting what we make failure mean, because we're not going to progress if we're scared to fail. And that whole lean startup mentality of the minimum viable product, and also fail fast. Don't linger in your failure, fail fast.
And learn how to pivot. Like, take the useful information and move. Don't get stuck in your own way because you thought it was a good idea and you might make it better now, but learn how to pivot.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's why there's the iPhone, right? What are we on, version 10? They're still making it better.
Well,
I mean,
They skipped version 9, but
well, version 10 was that much better, right? We're like, we can't call this version 9.
yeah.
Maybe. But anyways,
Yeah.
Any kind of last thoughts or words or anything you want to share, Yarrow?
I would say if you create something special and you know it's special and people appreciate it as special, keep bringing value to that, and don't try to sell out to someone outside of yourself. I really would just implore that if you end up creating a business that is there to sell, you're going to end up being sad about it in the end. You're going to lose your love for it. And that's something that happened with me almost. And I just really appreciate that the value of creating connection economy and creating this type of change in the world we want to see starts with you, it starts with your heart, and incorporates everything you want to bring to the world. So keep with that, keep that in focus when you are building a brand, building a business.
Right on, man. Yeah, an organization can't be any more conscious than its leader that runs it. So I would like to...
and
go.
I just think that like so many big businesses are trying to jump into consciousness, and just don't be that stepping stone for them. Create consciousness from the ground up. That's all.
Right on. Well, Yarrow, such a pleasure to have you. And I'd love to acknowledge you for all the consciousness you bring to the industry, as well as fun. You're a fun guy with much consciousness.
There you go. Yeah.
I had to say
definitely
that.
into fun gals too. No, just kidding.
Right on. Okay, Yarrow. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.